Editor's note, I am dying while editing and recording this, so if I sound like I'm dying, I am. Also, I guess here's a disclaimer. Warframe, believe it or not, is a game that prides itself on its character design. At first, to new player, these designs may seem to just like scraps of wires and metal to look vaguely robotic and mech-like. Lord knows that's what I thought when I first played this game. But as you play, you slowly realize that there's more to these designs than just details to fill spaces. Warframe has its own design conventions, its own philosophies, not to go into the individual inspirations for each frame. And that's not mentioning how important it is to the community being able to customize your character. There are entire communities formed just around this concept of fashion framing. This is definitely helped by the fact that most Warframes have a plethora of skins to choose from. Some made by the official Warframe creators, as well as some Tenno-gen ones made by the community and your fellow Tenno. But not all Warframes are created equally. Some of them, especially the older ones, have a plethora of skins, while some, despite being a few years old, are left in the dark. At the very least, almost every new Warframe gets an alternative helmet, which in most cases is better than the original, fucking foreskin looking ass. But sometimes they get lucky enough to be released with a new skin, often a voidshell one, which is just kind of taking the Warframe but stripping stuff off of it. Is this considered nudity? Can I show this on YouTube? And in this series, I take a Warframe, in this case the newest one, and create a new skin for them.
It should be noted that Styanax is no longer the new Warframe, but this video is supposed to come out on Halloween, when he was still considered the newest. So, yeah, editing Rose out.
Although unlike the Gyre video, Styanax does have an alternate skin, as well as the fact that I actually own a Styanax. It's because he was the 50th Warframe. To celebrate, he not only got a fucking sick-as-hell anime trailer, like, god damn, but anyone logged in with the first 2 weeks of his release just got him for free, meaning no having to get to higher levels to actually grind him, because I've still not even unlocked Steel Path. Hell, even after the Gyre video that was 6 months ago, I don't even have a Gyre. At least now you can have some nice footage instead of a still image. I really should work on getting a Gyre, you know. It's really disappointing I don't have one. What's this? Oh, neat. Anyways, but I also wanted to go more in depth with this one than just a Warframe. Here's something pop culture slightly related to him, and mix them together. Like work with the Gyre one because it's just Robot Ballerina plus Robot Ballerina, but that video, everything except the art was made in 24 hours. So I don't want to use that as gold standard. I'm making a new gold standard for the series. So let's look at some aspects of Styanax's design and see what we can mix with this concept to turn into an alternate outfit. Because unlike Warframe, I don't pull from Shakespeare or mythology, I pull from pop culture and niche fandoms, because this is the internet and that's the only thing people click on. So Styanax is based on the warriors of old, specifically from Rome and Greece, and his entire kit is based around this concept. He has a crowd control spear that when it hits an enemy, pulls anyone within 15 meters of it together, kind of like Vauban's vortex. A shield that launches a projectile on a cone hitbox, armor stripping enemy and giving you back health for each enemy hit. His third ability is not actually an attack, but more of a support ability, where you not only draw the attention of all nearby enemies, but you also slowly restore you and all your allies' energy, as well as any kill, either from Styanax himself or an assist from a teammate, gives back shields, which is great for his passive because the higher shields are, the more likely he is to get a critical hit. And the ability I specifically love, his spore, which is literally just fucking the 300 movie, but instead of arrows, it's spears. And so we have a lot to work with here. We have multiple spear-based attacks with both his 1 and 4, a shield motif with a lot of his promotional art and his 2, as well as a kind of Captain of the Guard with his Rally Call 3 ability. So looking at these, my first idea was, oh, he has a shield. He's like a fighter of sorts, a soldier. That's just Captain America. But then I realized making a Captain America-based Styanax would be kind of boring because I don't know a lot about comics, and so I couldn't find like any niche little details about the character to add on. It'd just be like, I saw Civil War once. Does that count as knowing about Captain America? And it just didn't feel right. And so instead of focusing on the shield, I decided to focus more on the spear. After all, he has 2 abilities based on the spear. So I thought, okay, who is both a soldier, has sort of Captain of the Guard mentality, and carries spears that sometimes seem like they're made of energy, but sometimes are actual spears? And then I had probably the greatest epiphany ever of the most obvious idea for this. Undyne! She hits all the boxes. It makes sense. Plus, Styanax's design has a lot of mix of both the more circuitry frames that are meant to look kind of like living organisms and the more alloy armor-based frames that are supposed to look like they're made of armor, which gives him an appearance that he's actually wearing armor despite the armor technically being a part of his body. I think about that, that's kind of weird. Hey, unlike Captain America, Undyne does have an armor set that we can incorporate into this. And so just like with the Gyre video, I went to the concepting stage, which this one I actually did live on stream over here on YouTube, before I had to move back to Twitch because YouTube did not like my internet for some reason. But here's just some highlights from that, instead of me talking about the speed paint, because I feel like this would be more enjoyable. And then the Rebecca Sugar video of her making a bunch of JoJo frames. Or not Rebecca Sugar, Rebecca Ford. Too many Rebeccas.
demands over Discord. Oh no. I have my notifications on, so I'll know when I see the message. I swear, if it's just like, give it a fat ass, like, that was already the plan. Styanax has no ass, I must give this man an axe. Not an axe. I'll give him an axe too, but he needs an ass. Sans Eye? Undertale reference? I don't know, I think there's not enough Undertale references in this. I should add a Sans Eye. Just... what was I doing? Oh yes, feet. Or I guess legs, then feet. I don't know what to do here. The artist is lost. Specifically... lost. Like, with animation, it's... with 2D is stylization, 3D is, fluidity and movement, and stop motion is for realism. At least is always what I've been taught and what I've thought. And I'm just not a big fan of stop motion. Like, I am very impressed when I see it. Like, as an someone who wants to go into animation, I love the concept of stop motion, but actually watching the films, they just seem too uncanny for me. I really need to play the Freddy Krueger NES game, because this music is a bop. And, like, looking on the site, it only has 5 songs in total. So, like, if they're all bops like this and House 3, me and all my homies love House 3. I found this abomination. Will Clip Studio let me put it in? Please. It's a balcony, baby. I'm gonna leave that there for a second. What was it? Oh yeah, Blur. As in desktop 1? Or no, it's probably 3. Yeah, this is from February. Around the time that
My name is Walter Hartwell White. I live at 308 Negra Arroyo Lane, Albuquerque, New Mexico, 87104. This is my confession. If you're watching this tape, I'm probably dead.
I see, the blind man.
Yeah, that was those. I don't know how many highlights there were, because I am kind of boring when I draw. I just sit there silently. So I tried to be as funny as I could. If you want to hear more of deep voice Rose, you can check me out on Twitch. I don't stream often, but the announcements are in my Discord whenever I do. As you can see, it basically just looks like if Undyne was a Warframe. I didn't add as much Styanax as I probably should have, but this was just a concept to try and throw ideas up onto the page. A lot of the stuff I liked in this one was the ribbon being used as a sort of placeholder for both Styanax's little helmet decoration he gets on top and almost all of his helmet, as well as Undyne's ponytail. And I think it'd be nice if that like kind of fluttered in the wind like that one Valkyrie cosmetic. I did my best to try to do what Styanax has, where it looks like he's wearing armor rather than the armor being part of him, which I think pulled off with the blue, but the fish scales didn't work out and they didn't make it to the final design, as Warframes are over-designed, but they're over-designed with a purpose. There's also a motif that you kind of see here that goes onto the final design of these like stripes. I thought of like, you know, like bluegill or tiger sharks, 2 very different fish now that I think about it. But that carries over a lot more heavily into the final design and replaces fish scale motif. As well as another motif that you'll see a lot more in the final design are hearts. You kind of see them there like on the feet, the ankle, right on the titties. Which, making them have tits was someone in chat's idea, but you know, it was fun. I just thinking like, you know, Styanax is just now transgender. That's how this works. If it's trans femme from going to Styanax to this, or trans masc going from this to Styanax, up for view interpretation. This is all in the realm of fantasy anyways, in a fantasy sci-fi video game. Anyways, and while we could move to revealing the final design, shut up, phone! And while we could go to reveal the final design, like just right now, I could show it here. Like I could just show it. It's on screen just in a silhouette right now. I could show the thing right now. But that's boring. And if I want to make this series, I gotta keep a little consistency, so just like the Gyre video, I wrote lore for this one, which is actually the reason this video was delayed for so long, because originally I was gonna do a pseudo-animatic style thing, and I had like a narrator character who's like a Warframe OC that was supposed to connect all these together, and it was gonna be Halloween, so it's gonna be all scary, but it just didn't work out. I put too much on my plate, I realize that now, and I'm not gonna make the same mistake in the future, so I decided to style it more like those creepypasta readings you see by like Synimium, I think is how you say it, and Mr. Creeps, and I still decided to narrate it in the character's voice, which, yeah, I hope you enjoy.
Ah, Tenno. I assumed you'd find this transmission eventually. While you're here, let Telltale do what he do best, and tell a tall tale. After the old war, the Dax were quite rare to come by Tenno, even more rare than the Tenno themselves. Most were killed during or after the war, and those who lived struggled to escape their past, becoming refugees of the old war. But even while trying to leave the past behind, the future will always head towards you like a bullet between the eyes.
At this point in history, Grineer had conquered the Earth, with anyone else only be able to survive in small pockets, such as the case of one lone Dax survivor, a nomadic traveler of the Earth and its many, many dangers, none of which more threatening than the Grineer, and thousands of Grineer, but only one Dax. So he was always on the move, never sticking to one place for too long. He traveled by any means necessary, foot, ship, boat, whatever he could get his hands on. This all accumulated into one day, after a heavy storm while he was on the sea. He crashed on a small island. At first it seemed abandoned, but soon he found a small fishing village. After talking to the locals, a hermit allowed him to stay the night at his home, only asking he help the next day with his work as payment. He was hesitant but agreed. As the sun rose the next day, they went out to sea. The spears used for fishing weren't that different from spears used in combat, so through a mix of his previous training and augmentations, the Dax was a quick learner. As the day was nearing closer and closer to an end, the water soon calmed, and as the old man rowed them back to shore, to help pass the time, he decided to tell tales to the traveler. Now their island had been secluded for a long time. As each generation passed, things such as the Corpus, the Oric, and the Grineer, they all slowly devolved into myth for the small island. And yet they had their own tales of horror to tell. You see, the island was founded by a small fishing boat that got lost at sea. They had become stuck on the shore, and while attempting to free themselves through the night, something strange happened. With dozens of people trying to free the boat, the disturbances in the water seemed to awaken something. Legend says the stars began to fall from the sky into the sea, creating a beautiful galaxy beneath their feet. They were all awestruck, doing all they could to appreciate the beauty. But as more and more stars began to appear in the ocean, the captain and a few others felt disturbed by it. As the beautiful sight grew and grew in size, so did the despair of the captain. He felt that if he stayed any longer, it would be tempting fate. Those who stayed and dazzled at the glittering waters were never heard from again, but even though they were never seen, their screams could be heard throughout the night. For months and months and months there was this horrid screaming in the air, every single night. And every single night someone swore they recognized the voice, until finally, the screaming stopped. Since then it's become tradition, every fisherman who goes out to sea must dock their boat by sunset, unless you hear the captain's wailing crew beckoning for you to join them. As the boat was docked, the hermit thanked the Dax. It was the most successful haul he had in quite a while. He wasn't as young as he used to be. The Dax thanked him for his hospitality, and as he began to leave, fisherman said under his breath, "We could really use more boxer like you around here." The Dax stopped in his tracks. He looked back at the hermit, a frail old man who didn't seem to have many years left in him. And after little consideration, the Dax approached the man with an offer. It was night after all, and traveling at nightfall is rather dangerous, especially if the fisherman's story is true. And so the Dax made a deal. If he could stay one more night, he would help the fisherman bring his haul to market tomorrow. The hermit smiled and agreed, and allowed him to stay one more night. One night became two, then two became a week, then a week a month, and soon, the Dax was just another member of the village. He spent his days working for the hermit, and in return, the hermit let him stay at his cabin for as long as he needed. And while he appreciated the help, the hermit was just glad to not be alone anymore. Soon, the Dax had been there for a whole year, and as a way to both celebrate his anniversary on the island, as well as thank the hermit for his generosity, he came up with an idea to give the hermit a day of rest. That night, after they docked the boat and the hermit went to bed, he would sneak out at night, fishing on the empty sea with no other boats to compete, and bring in a large haul before sunrise. That way, him and the hermit could just spend a day relaxing and reminiscing. So as the sky grew dark and the cabin grew quiet, he took the hermit's boat and began to row out farther and farther and farther into the seas. And as he grew farther and farther from the island, the seas became quieter and quieter, the only sound being his oars hitting the water's surface. Eventually, he reached his destination, the place that he fished every day, now a quiet, dark abyss. The water so still it could be mistaken for ice, lit only by a single lantern and the light of the moon. Despite this, he didn't let the silence get to him. He poured the bait into the water and readied his spear, waiting for the fish to arrive. And as he waited, and waited, and waited, the water not making so much as a splash. As he was about to give up and roll back to shore, a dim light began to appear. First one, then two, then three, then four. He got excited. These must have been the fish he was waiting for. The fisherman had shown him fish that glow in the dark before. They were rather hard to catch during the day, but still a sight to see nonetheless. Although it was strange, every single light was green. He'd seen glowing purple fish, glowing blue fish, glowing red fish, but never green, and let alone not all of them being green. And as more and more lights began to surround the boat, he was just ecstatic that he would get a huge haul so fast. In his excitement, he didn't notice that the silence was being broken. Despite the sea still being as still as ever, there was a slight buzzing arising from the water, as if a horde of insects were approaching. It grew louder and louder and louder, and as the noise grew, so did the light. Soon, they didn't seem like specks of stars in the sea, but instead, a giant glowing mass beneath him, and the noise grew and grew and grew, till finally, and out the sea erupted. Spears of light exploded from the water surface, glowing the same haunting pale green, each whizzing at the edges, causing the boat to rock back and forth, taking out his lantern and his sides. Despite this, the boat still somehow stayed afloat, but he didn't care. His eyes were no longer on the sea, nor the spears that were decimating his vessel. He had his eyes straight in front of him, right at the front of the boat. He had his eyes on a figure that slowly arose from the water, a dark figure with a single green dot glowing brighter than the sea that now blinded him. And as the figure grew and grew, it jumped onto the boat, threatening to topple it with his weight. But Axel had seen the horrors of war and the cruelty of man, and yet in this moment he was more scared than he'd ever been. As he stared into the creature's single glowing eye, it let out a scream that could chill the hottest of hells. It was a chorus of screams that Dax was familiar with. Not the screams of warriors charging into battle, not the screams of soldiers fighting for their lives, but the screams of those they killed, the ones that they mercilessly brutalized. These were the screams of those who had perished. And soon the Dax's screams joined them, and the sea once again became quiet, silent, and still. The hermit never saw him again. He assumed that he took his boat and ran, traveling back to the life that he had before. He was once again alone, but some nights he swore he could hear them, shouting for him, far over the horizon. And it seemed every night the shouts were getting louder and louder and louder until they stopped. I hope you enjoyed that tale, Tenno. And if you ever want to hear another tall tale, Telltale is always happy to provide. I hope you enjoyed that. I enjoyed reading it. I'm very bad at doing voices that aren't either my own or Carl Weezer, so yeah, I just kind of tried to take multiple Warframe NPC voices and mix them together, which ended up just making him sound like a bad mix between a French accent and a Spanish accent. Yeah, the voice needs some work, but I feel like the character's there. Here's also some old concept art that never got finished from when I was doing the animatic, just so you can kind of like put a face with the voice. But it was a lot of fun to write and a lot of fun to record. Anyways, here is the final design. Speaking of the final design, let's talk about it a bit. So of course the colors got changed around a bit. I still wanted the armor to feel like it was something that they were wearing rather than a part of them, but also didn't want it to just kind of mesh together and not feel cohesive. So I changed one of the grays to a bright yellow, which was already part of the design, but now this becomes a lot more of a focal point. Definitely has a lot more aspects that could be used in fashion. Shut up, phone. As well as that stripe motif I mentioned is just kind of all over. If I needed to fill details, it's add stripes. I did try to stick to like the amount of colors that Warframes are allowed, you know, the emissive, the secondary, trietary, primary, and accent, I think were the 5 of them, along with technically energy color, but I didn't incorporate that into the design. And you can kind of tell what's like primary, what's secondary. If not, I'll point out on screen. The only ones I'm not sure of are, the only one I'm unsure of is I don't know if I want the red or the green to be the emissive and accent respectively, because like if the green part's glowed, that'd be pretty cool, but if the red part's glowed, that'd also be pretty cool. But I think either way, the eye and the ribbon will both glow, like whether it's part of the emissive or accent, whatever. This one also just seems a lot more like a Warframe that was inspired by something rather than literally just turning something into a Warframe, if that makes sense. Like it's less of drawing a character in this game's style and more of making a character for this game inspired by something completely unrelated. And you can kind of see how it's Styanax, like the tits make it kind of hard to tell this is one of the male frames, but you know, I thought it'd be funny, and the original character I based the skin off of is female, so it makes sense. But like you got the kind of balding head that looks like they're wearing armor design, the asymmetrical legs, which is like something I saw that was really cool on Styanax. I hope they do that more Warframes. I kind of like asymmetrical designs. And yeah, there's not much else to say. The design kind of just speaks for itself. I definitely think this was a huge improvement on the Gyre video in both technical skill and the ability that I know a lot more about making YouTube videos now. And I kind of learned the lesson of don't set deadlines for myself when I have an art-based channel, because art takes a long time to make, and setting 10 days for myself that originally seemed possible, it was not as possible as I wanted. So I think I'm just gonna move to a schedule that is at least once a month. Like if it takes more than 1 month, I'll post on my community tab, but I'm not gonna set a date so I disappoint the like 5 people who watch this channel consistently, because like there's not a lot of you, but I don't want to disappoint you still. But if you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, leave a comment, because that really helps. This channel has been growing slowly but surely. The next video will probably be another Team Fortress 2 weapon video, because the Pokemon Warframe one's taking a lot longer than expected. I started that in August, and it's just been hard to get the motivation to work on over 10 drawings, so I hope you forgive that. And I decided I'll do medic, because medic sounds a lot more fun to do than heavy, and I already have the footage. But with that being said, the next video will be on Christmas Day. Know that I appreciate your existence. Please keep on existing, and I hope you have a good existence. Bye!